Hello everybody, and another video on the way home. So just be another response video to what took place in Belfast over the last couple of days and why it scares the living daylights out of most Irish people, including myself. The Belfast riots that have taken place were as a response to a knife attack by a Sudanese man who attacked viciously another man in Belfast, causing great amount of damage to the man's back, face and neck. As a result, so-called protesters that took to the streets and basically destroyed several cars, destroyed a bus, tried and managed to get into people's houses of those that they deemed who did not belong in Northern Irish society. This in particular took place in unionist areas of the north, which is something that I have talked about in a previous video, how I find it unusual that people from these areas would react so violently to attack on a gentleman when this attack took place in a nationalist area. The situation is, however, a bit more severe than it would be in other parts of the UK, because despite the fact that there was other attacks in the UK and other demonstrations, the ones in Northern Ireland tend to turn to violence quite regularly. After listening to some commentary about this, doing some reading and thinking about it, I have to agree with some commentators who maintain that this has all got its roots somewhat in the unionist paramilitaries that were active in Northern Ireland during the time of the Troubles. These paramilitary groups have lost a lot of their control within Northern Irish society, and any excuse to regain that control they're going to take. The people involved in these attacks did not discriminate against businesses. They attacked shops, they attacked public transport, they attacked people's cars, they attacked people's homes. They seem to be lashing out in all directions. And you could say that this is as a result of years of chronic mismanagement of Northern Ireland by the various Stormont authorities. Or you could also say it was because of the finances heading towards Northern Ireland had been used badly and people have been felt left behind. However, that's all just an excuse. At the end of the day, it's about power. Who has the power and who doesn't? Who can order these thugs out onto the street to destroy public property and private property, and who can't? And the unionist paramilitaries, which I have to say that at the moment there doesn't seem to be much evidence directly linking them to this, but they seem to be the only group that could possibly do this. Now, what does this mean in a historical sense? Well, this is deadly dangerous, because when Northern Ireland became its own independent state, these types of attacks would happen on a regular basis in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up to the time of the Troubles itself, where they became a lot more violent and aggressive. They took place against Roman Catholics, against those who are of nationalist persuasion, and against those who wanted to see Northern Ireland become a more inclusive and a more liberal society. This was let go and was ignored by successive Northern Irish governments and by the government in Westminster, and it just resulted in it all boiling over into a massive sectarian conflict that we know as the Troubles. If you tolerate this now, this is where we're going to end up, because at the moment they are tarring every person who happens to come from outside of Europe, who doesn't happen to have pale white skin. Every person's been tarred with the same brush due to the bad and terrible and completely condemnable behaviour of one knife man. And as much as I despise the attack that happened and hope that there is justice will be served for this knife attack, this attempted murder of this man in Belfast by a Sudanese national, that doesn't mean to say that all people who are from Sudan, or all people who've got dark skin, or all people who are Muslim, or all people who are whatever group you want to pick, it doesn't mean to say that they are all tarred with the same brush. We should know better. We should know better than not to do this on the island of Ireland. We have been on the receiving end of this for centuries, and this has just ended up in more and more violence spiralling out of control on our island. So, unfortunately, people don't learn from their history, and people can't see the warning signs coming up. But I like to think and I hope that this will be a wake-up call for some, that this type of policies and type of rhetoric against whole swaths of people due to a few bad actors is not on and has to be called out for what it is. On the other side of the coin, here in Dublin, we had a knife attack against a young man which actually resulted in his death. He was basically hunted down on the streets of Dublin, and the perpetrators have been brought to justice, or at least they've been arrested anyway. However, this isn't getting as much leeway in the papers as the situation in the north, or hasn't caused as much outlash, because this young man happened to come from Nigeria. Not to say that there should be violence for knife attacks of the scale that there is in Northern Ireland, but I just wanted to point out the fact that nobody in the political situation here was calling every person from the group who did murder this young man. Nobody was calling for outrage and attacks against their group. The same happened in Britain as well, when a young Saudi Arabian man was murdered, and there was no calls for people to come out against him. The same happened in Britain when a young woman, whose name escapes me unfortunately, was attacked by a serving police officer. There were no calls to come out against the serving and attack other police officers and their families. Like, this has to stop. Scapegoating others just has to stop. And I will make another video explaining why I think Northern Ireland is just, and Belfast in particular, is just primed for all of this, on my worries with regards to other events that are about to come up in the future that could result in a whole-scale violence as well. But for right now, I want to use this opportunity to call out those politicians and those members of the media who like to stoke up anger and resentment in this way and tar everybody with the same brush. Right? It has to come to an end. These people are not protesters, they are thugs and terrorists. They don't have a legitimate reason for burning people out of their homes, for destroying people's cars, for destroying buses. and it's not justified under any circumstances. Just as much as young gentlemen should not be sliced up on the streets of any civilized city by anybody else for any reason. Right, take care and have a nice day.